Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So this wasn't what I was expecting. I mean, sure, I knew that there'd be some traction coming from Juice WRLD and Future's collaboration, but beyond that, I'll freely admit I was not expecting the same level of success from Khalid or Lil Yachty, or that none of them would result in the biggest new arrival of this week. Again, it's impossible to say how much of this will last long term, but it does make for a slightly busier week than I was expecting. Oh joy. And yet, if we look at our top 10, none of it was enough to beat out Girls Like You by Maroon 5 featuring Cardi B. And if I'm being honest, I'm still pretty damn annoyed that it's still at number 1. It's not dominant on sales or streaming, mostly getting propped up by residual YouTube and the top airplay spot. And even that is diminishing as we speak. Hell, I thought Sicko Mode by Travis Scott had a serious shot to unseat it as it surged up to number 2 thanks to YouTube and even better streaming and real airplay momentum, but it lags on the sales and it's losing in the margins on the radio, so it just doesn't have enough just yet. Still blew past Lucid Dreams by Juice WRLD. We spent the week wavering on the radio despite some strong streaming to hold at number 3, but it's got some competition now coming from Happier by Marshmello and Bastille rising up to number 4 on big sales and even bigger airplay. Yeah, streaming is behind, but it might not be enough to hold this back just yet. Hell, it broke past Better Now by Post Malone at number 5, but that might have happened anyway as all categories are slowing down, especially on the radio. Then you had ZZ by Kodak Black featuring Travis Scott and Offset lose off the debut, but only down to number 6. Streaming had held steady on all accounts, much to my amazement. I thought this would fall off a fair bit harder. Honestly, I was kind of hoping for that. But if you compare it to the growth of Youngblood by 5 Seconds of Summer up to number 7, see, it's tough to say with this one because sales might be good and radio growth is still there, but I'm not sure how much longer it'll hold on at this rate, especially without streaming. Then we had Drip Too Hard by Lil Baby and Gunna somehow holding on at number 8. Again, all it really has is streaming, and that's not dying as quickly as it really should, but I will say it could be overtaken by our new top 10 entry, Sunflower by Post Malone and Swae Lee at number 9. As usual, we'll be talking more about the song later, but it's got surprising traction on streaming and sales, and even a little bit of radio momentum. It'll probably fall out of the top 10 next week, but still, I might want to watch this one going forward. And finally, returning to the top 10, we've got Love Lies by Khalid and Normani up to number 10, and I'd like to say it's coincidental thanks to Khalid's EP release, but it's not falling on the radio. It's got enough inertia to just hold on there, if nowhere else. But on that topic are losers and dropouts. And in the latter category, we had some big ones. I mean, sure, you might expect to see Sunrise, Sunburn, Sunset by Luke Bryan, and Medicine by Queen Naija. They dropped off naturally, and I could have predicted that Simple by Florida Georgia Line was going away, still gonna make the year-end list. But the biggest exit was Meant to Be by Baby Rex and Florida Georgia Line after spending a full year on the Hot 100. About damn time this is gone. And really, I've got a hard time complaining about most of our losers here. Yeah, I'm a little bit dispirited that Mona Lisa by Lil Wayne featuring Kendrick Lamar dropped to 55, and that Breakup in the End by Cole Swindle lost all of its gains down to 76, but the rest, they don't really bother me. A particular note of the loss for Lil Baby and Gunna, with Close Friends sliding down to 42 and Never Recover with Drake going down to 49. And again, I'm not gonna complain about Falling Down by the late Lil Peep and XXXTentacion going to 66, or No Brainer by DJ Khaled featuring Justin Bieber, Chance the Rapper, and Quavo dropping to 73, or Venom by Eminem spurting down to 74, or New Patek by Lil Uzi Vert breaking at 90, or Africa by Weezer finally hitting 96. And then finally there's I'll Never Love Again by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper going down to 67, but given that the video came out, I can see this rebounding, possibly in a big way. Sadly, I can't really say that our gains and returning entries are filling the slots well here though. I might not mind backing it up by Partisan Fontaine featuring Cardi B back at 95, although I've got no expectations it'll stick around. But to see Notice by Little Mosey up to 80, Lose It by Kane Brown rise up to 56, and Without Me by Halsey surge up to 12 thanks to the video, yeah, no, not a fan. Then there's Leave Me Alone by Flip De Niro up to 53. I'll say it again, a hook that annoying will probably make it a hit, but thankfully the rest of our gains are mostly tolerable. Breathin' by Ariana Grande's up to 41, Speechless by Dan and Shay rose up to 52, and Better by Khalid rose off the release of the EP up to 34. Not bad. And leading off of all that, we got a pretty hefty list of new arrivals. Starting off with something I did not expect at all, number 100, Burning Man by Dierks Bentley featuring Brothers Osborne.
Still a little bit burning man, burning man.
So I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised that Dierks Bentley hasn't been pushing his new album The Mountain harder. It was a really good album, it sold reasonably well, and if he pushed the right singles, I think it could have some traction. And yet, for as much as I like Brothers Osborne, I'm not sure this would have been my choice for the second single. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind the heavier focus on the low acoustics, and Dierks Bentley has good interplay with the two brothers, and the song has a certain haggard, windswept quality that fits for a song using Burning Man as a metaphor. But I don't know, the tone of the guitar and the solos sounds kind of weedy, and the lyrics feel a little bit more scattered than they would need to be. You'd think that the hook would soar a little bit higher given how much momentum the song has, and it just kind of doesn't. It's still good, but I'm not really sure it'll stick around. Just saying. Number 98, Get Dripped by Lil Yachty featuring Playboi Carti.
I get that drip, you get drip. I'm for that bitch, I'm a pimp. I'm in love, but we not simple. I'm for that bitch, she get big. We ain't that big with no teeth.
Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I get why the drip has been embraced by hip-hop a lot this year as slang, but for me it's had the unintended consequences of reminding me that when something drips, it falls away, very quickly is gone. And on that note, Lil Yachty. Yeah, in 2018, the greater draw might wind up being Playboi Carti here, but given that he has absolutely nothing interesting to say, as usual, against this burbling chiptune melody, and his hook blends in with his own verse, I just wind up trying to pay more attention to Lil Yachty. And that might have been a mistake, because it's becoming abundantly clear he's not trying anymore, with incredibly basic triplet flows and forgettable brand name porn. And while I've said a lot of harsh things about Lil Yachty before in my reviews, hearing him become boring on this fragment of a song, somehow that winds up even more of a disappointment, so no. Not good. Number 93, Kiss and Make Up by Dua Lipa and BLACKPINK. Seeing Dua Lipa collaborate with the K-pop group BLACKPINK on the re-release of her debut makes so much sense. I'm honestly a little bit surprised I didn't think of the possibility sooner. I mean, Dua Lipa is a straightforward modern pop artist, so why not work with one of the genres that can really deliver in that territory internationally? And yet, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by this. I don't deny that Dua Lipa and BLACKPINK have some decent chemistry, but given that they both have such strident personalities and the warping, pitch-shifted tones seem to oddly diminish the vocal presence of everybody, it gives me the weird feeling that this collaboration should have a lot more color and clash than it really does. And that's before you get to the content, a song where they're looking to make up with a partner and reunite, and it just feels kind of weird that they didn't make much of their distinctive roles within the song between Dua Lipa and BLACKPINK. Just kind of a missed writing opportunity. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad song, but I'm not quite as grabbed by it as I want to be, and given who it's coming from, that might be an issue. Number 92, Make It Back by Juice WRLD.
I wasted all my cash, yeah. I don't get no fuck, cause I'm gonna make that shit back, yeah. I'm gonna make that shit back, yeah.
So like with all these trap collaboration albums, we wind up getting a few solo cuts from each artist, and given that Juice WRLD has the most mainstream attention right now, he's got the charting entry, and it exists, I guess. Seriously, the song is less than 2 minutes. Juice WRLD seems to think having a decent flow is optional. The bass mastering is really sloppy. The melody barely feels like it exists. And Juice WRLD talking about taking your girl with a barely concealed contempt for women that isn't really obscured by the generic brand name bragging. So yeah, it's pointless. And it's actually pretty bad. So next, number 91, Yacht Club by Lil Yachty featuring Juice WRLD.
Too many wild parties on the yacht. Me and Bo got kicked out the yacht.
So we're apparently not getting rid of Juice WRLD that easily, as he's now on the second song with Lil Yachty here, and you know, I'll say it, even if the fragmented, plucky melody is barely audible, it's not terrible, and Juice WRLD and Lil Yachty certainly have a certain lazy chemistry. The problem is that while Lil Yachty's just increasingly lethargic in his bragging, and somehow accidentally getting a girl pregnant that he then lets screw his entire crew, Juice WRLD is just sounding increasingly unlikable and really untalented, sounding a little bit more aware that what he's going to go off on, but then dropping lines like, "No games, but I Xbox control her." Yeah, I get the metaphor, but it still sounds really creepy. And beyond that, look, neither of these guys are great rappers or writers or even really all that good to begin with, but given the implication that they're taking your bitch, I just like to think that they're talking about the girls between the two of them and not the audience. Still kind of gross though, I'd skip it. Number 89, Vertigo by Khalid. So now we've got a breather with 3 Khalid songs in a row here, all off the EP that he released that's done surprisingly well. And for the first cut, I'm honestly kind of digging this. I'll freely admit that Khalid's hazy brand of melancholy can be very hit and miss for me, especially if there isn't a lot of momentum, but bringing in those more dreamy guitars and the strings, he adds a little bit more warmth to the song in a way that kind of reminds me melodically of Bittersweet Symphony, which kind of makes sense given that the song is interpolating Coldplay's Viva La Vida. But what I think I like the most here is the content, where Khalid forces the sharp question of whether or not his problems are driven off his own insecurities or off something he can't control given the chaos of his modern life. And while he's been tumbling downwards through so much of it, there seems to be a little bit more of a core of strength to this, even in the face of much worse to come, which has a little bit more resonance to the song. So yeah, this is pretty good. I dig it. Number 88, Suncity by Khalid featuring Empress of. So let's just tackle this right now. Empress of was on my schedule proper for reviews. I put the album on, but in revisiting her back catalog and given the mountain of albums that I otherwise have to cover, I chose to take the album off the list given what I wasn't all that impressed by what I had heard. That said, this title track with her on it, it's pretty decent. A reggaeton pivot with some more brittle guitars, a thicker sense of atmosphere, and Khalid and Empress of have some pretty good chemistry. I do wish the lyrics had a little bit more detail though, and the hook brought a little bit more intensity and edge, but for this sort of smoky hookup, yeah, you know what? Solid stuff. I dig it. Number 83, Saturday Nights by Khalid. They don't care like I do. Nowhere like I do. Nowhere like I do. Okay, I'll freely admit there's a lot to really like about this song. The rickety guitar that still's got a bit of depth against that echoing snap, although I do wish the beat that came in had managed to balance out some of that atmosphere a little more effectively. The faint jingle of sleigh bells in the hook, I really like that, and the main melody line is pretty damn solid. Hell, I like the verses too, as they bring that sort of greater detail I appreciate, and Khalid slipping into his liquid upper register for the final hook sounds really great too. But am I the only one who thinks he might be working the "your parents don't know or care as much as I do" line a little bit too hard? Look, I know his younger demographic and I know exactly how well it'll play for young love, and you know what, I can kind of respect that level of melodrama, but the fact that it monopolizes the hook, that idea, it throws me off a little more than I should. Still, good enough song. I dig it. Number 82, Astronauts by Future and Juice WRLD. Dropping the ass low, right? They like a lasso. 40 on me, it's fuego hot. Give you a halo. At your neck, ready or not. Me and Pluto, astronauts. Am I the only one who gets the impression that Future and Juice WRLD don't have a lot of chemistry here? I mean, there's nothing wrong with them trading off verses in the hook, but we only get that hook at the beginning and end of the song with nothing splitting up the verses, and that doesn't do a lot to build rhythm between the two of them, or really a lot of dynamics in the song. And that's where you realize the pianos and wispy backing vocals don't add as much atmosphere as they could, and that Future's trying to rely more on his singing voice to meet Juice WRLD in the middle, which only winds up making his flow seem a lot more awkward. And the content, look, it's brand names, drug abuse, and forgettable nihilism. Although I did think it was kind of funny that Juice WRLD called himself an a-hole, which doesn't even make the rhyme on the hook. Found it a lot less funny when Future then referenced back to it though on his third verse. Lovely. Number 72, Jet Lag by Future and Juice WRLD featuring Young Scooter.
I can't fuck you right now, no, I got a drug.
Okay, at least this song feels competently structured, but again, I don't think our frontmen have a lot of chemistry. Juice WRLD has more chemistry than Lil Yachty than this. It almost feels like all of Future's ad-libs were dropped in post and hit against Juice WRLD's hook in these weird ways, which is kind of a shame because while the verses are empty brand name porn and screwing your girl, I kind of like the oily low-end synths that almost pick up something of a dark wave vibe with how they pulse against what sounds like a guitar. It's got some swagger and some atmosphere to the production, kind of reminiscent of what Ray Strimmer's done a couple times, like last time they with Power Glide. And just like that song, feels like the MCs just can't really do it justice. Real shame there. Number 65, When the Party's Over by Billie Eilish.
I could lie, say I like it like that, like it like that.
So I'll admit to being really intrigued with where Billie Eilish is taking her music, more than typically I am for a lot of pop starlets. She seems to have a better command of her atmosphere, the songwriting's definitely above average, she's got some genuine intensity and can play to some nastier, darker impulses, and I'll freely admit to being a little bit surprised how consistent she's been on guest performances and on her own. So this being the lead up to her debut, which is apparently coming out in 2019, she put this song out and, I won't mince words, this is excellent. I love that she's got the confidence to rely on more restraint, but bring in just enough swell from the backing vocals that can almost feel a cappella in points. I love the intricacy of the piano that takes some real subtle melodic turns that if you pay attention are really quite compelling. I really love how the bass is just allowed to simmer and add that undercurrent of real tension. She's described the song as being more angry than sad, and yeah, I believe it. And I like the songwriting, capturing that infuriating moment when people just keep shoving each other away for all the wrong reasons, and how sometimes loneliness just might wind up feeling better, even if it sucks to actually get there. So yeah, I'm entirely on board with this. Genuinely great song. The sooner the album comes, the better. Definitely check this out. Highly recommended. Number 54, Money by Cardi B.
Get a little cash, you shake it real fast, you get a little more. I got bands in the coop, bustin' out the roof. I got bands in the coop, bustin' out the roof.
So here's a question. Why is Cardi B releasing a new single? I know she's had a great run in 2018, but if there's a point for her to take a breath and let herself take a break, it would be now. It's not like she isn't still a major cultural presence. She'll still get called upon for guest verses, and the only reason to listen to the current #1 hit on the Hot 100 is her. But really, I think the larger problem is that Money just isn't all that good. Putting aside the comparison to Moneybag, which I think I'm the only person who actually really likes that song, this is blocky and minimalist, but in the wrong way, with the abortive piano chords and the trap knock that doesn't complement Cardi B's flow and her odd lack of intensity. She doesn't sound like she cares. And when most of the song's repetitive punchlines feel increasingly forgettable and disposable, yeah, not fun or all that good. Next, number 26, Fine China by Future and Juice WRLD.
She had a vagina. I get lost in her eyes like dust from the sky. It's her body and nobody, I refuse to compromise. So if she leaves, I'ma kill her. Oh, she'll die. Did I say that out loud? I'm so crazy about mine.
Okay, honest question. Who finds anything here all that attractive or interesting? There's no coherent melody outside the vocal line, and utterly by-the-numbers trap beat. Juice WRLD and Future continue to have no chemistry. Future utterly phones in his verse, rattling off about all the planets he wants to take his girl to, and Juice WRLD's hook, oh boy. There's been a lot of attention to how he frames the second half and wanting to kill the girl if she leaves, and an absolute refusal to compromise. But am I the only one who's a little bit disgusted with the line, I jump in the pussy like a lake, I'm a diver, followed by the accusation of the last guy being a pussy and having a vagina, which he croons out with all of his strength. And well, I really could say more here. What if she was into that at some point? Why is nobody talking about the masculine pussy? The truth is that everything Juice WRLD says reflects very believable immaturity and some really ugly songwriting. He's not that good of an artist. He certainly needs a lot more development. Let's just hope this winds up forgotten sooner rather than later, because yeah, this sucks. And finally, number 9, Sunflower by Post Malone and Swae Lee.
Calling it quits now, baby, I'm a wreck. Crash at my place, baby, you're a wreck. Needless to say, I'm keeping her check. She was a bad, nevertheless.
So this is a song associated with the upcoming animated Spider-Man movie Into the Spider-Verse. In a world where soundtrack hits are back to being a thing again, this broke into the top 10. And I'm a little stunned as to why. I mean, by the standards of Post Malone and Swae Lee, I actually think it's above average, coasting on a pretty solid muted synth groove with hints of guitar and a beeping beat. And neither artist indulges in the vocal warbles that annoy me, but you dig beneath all that, you're just not given all that much beyond a pretty basic undercooked hookup where both partners seem to be a mess. What any of this has to do with Spider-Man, I don't really know, but otherwise it's just pretty forgettable. And while it is set up to do pretty well, I doubt it'll have that much staying power. I'm sorry. And that was this week. Kinda messy, but there were standouts on both ends here. Fine China, but Juice WRLD and Future easily nabs the worst of the week, but Make It Back just edges out Yacht Club for the dishonorable mention. Thank you, Juice WRLD. Now for the best, we do have some good options here, but I think When the Party's Over by Billie Eilish, it easily takes this. With Vertigo by Khalid right behind her as the honorable mention. That's a really good song. Really, all the Khalid songs are really good. Next week, I'm not sure, to be honest. There doesn't seem to be a massive release that's got everybody talking in the mainstream, so it could get pretty interesting. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.